All right, you three, we're going to start. I can catch up later. Um, well, I want to give an announcement on a new job posting on our myrbc.org. I'm going to pull it up here real quick to talk about it. It's a part-time, going to start out anyway as a part-time position, and it is IT system admin. So I can blow it up for you guys to see it. It's IT system admin assistant for Emry Air, I'm sorry. Position primary focus will support IT to a company of 150 users. It's going to be part-time, 25 to 30 hours a week, work around your school schedule. It will be good pay. It is a graduate of RBC that runs this now. And so if you're interested or you know somebody's interested that needs a good paying part-time job in IT, if that's what you want to go into, if that's speaking to you, they just need somebody that's willing to learn, hard worker. That's it. They'll teach you everything that you need to know. Make sense? So share that with folks that you know. It is on our Facebook and Twitter and our page as well, our myrbc.org. Some of the duties you'll be doing is setting up a personal computer, software, troubleshooting, basic troubleshooting, installing software and hardware like printers, things like that. Other duties will be based on your skills. And all you need really is to be willing to show up and work. They do have a pre-employment drug screen you have to go through, which everybody has to do that now anyway, any job you go with. And so again, 25, 30 hours a week, work around your schedule, Emry Air, IT support, and the person that posted it is a graduate of our courses and of our college here. And they just need you to send a resume to them, one-page resume. If you need help on a resume, I can help you with that. But avail yourself and read that. I didn't read the entire sheet here, but I have talked to the individual that posted it and said they just need a RVC student that's willing to learn that's in our courses here in CIS. So it'll be a great opportunity to learn from a fairly medium-sized company in Rockford, 150 users, pretty good size. Do what now?
What company is it?
Emry Air by the airport.
Okay.
And 150 users, and it's part-time, work around your school schedule. The student's a graduate that runs it now is a graduate of RVC. Great guy to work with, but just basic networking type of stuff, and anything you don't know, they're not going to make you do. In fact, they'll probably help you if you don't know it, if they want you to do it. If you don't know it, they're not going to like say, well, too bad. You're gonna have to do it anyway. And so they're real good to work with. He's real good to work with. So if you're not interested, but you know somebody it is, point them to our website so they can continue the fill out a resume and send it that way. Jim Conley just got through doing the TechScope Tuesday. If you didn't get a chance to watch it, he does share some of his favorite movies. Also, some of the classes he's teaching next semester that are kind of upper end classes past Cisco. So if you've had 3 or 4 Cisco, up through Cisco 4, you'd probably be interested in some of the courses he mentioned in the TechScope. And in order for it to go, we need a certain number of students for it to go. So watch the TechScope, and he'll give you a spill of what's coming up next semester. And so let's jump right into it. This week we're covering Chapter 6. On Thursday, we're going to be doing a in-class lab on spoofing your MAC and IP address. And we'll be using Wireshark and an app called MAC Address Changer. Once you get through playing with that and running that, it'll basically change all the IPs on that computer. So all of us that are here, when we run it, it'll change all of our IP addresses and MAC addresses to be the very same in the entire room, is what it does. We'll talk about why that is, why hackers do that, what the purpose of it is, and ways that you can thwart it from not happening on your network. So let's go and get started here with Chapter 6. We're going to look at some different devices on a network security devices, how they're used, and look at what's called translation access control, and how to enhance security throughout the network. So not all networks or applications, are designed with security in mind. We've all had them, right? You might have had an application yourself. Maybe you download it on your phone or you download it on a computer and you found out, I shouldn't have done that. We've all done that. I won't ask you to raise your hand, but we've all done that. And so whether it be an app somebody told us about or something we found on the web, and we're like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I'm going to try that. And it ended up being not so cool. So because of that, networks must provide the security and protection. I talked to some of appliances already in here, one being Barracuda I recommend. That's a real popular appliance in networking to block things that are doing malicious activity. Like saying it's a game app, right? And you download it to your computer and it's constantly giving out your traffic information of where you're going. Well, apps like Barracuda, network hardware device like Barracuda can protect you against that. There's also software that can allow you to do that. One I'll recommend is Zone Alarm. Zone Alarm is a very good blocking software firewall that you can manipulate it a little bit easier than a Windows firewall, and you can tweak it a little bit easier. Not that you can't tweak Windows firewall and have it block certain things, but it's a little harder sometimes. You generally in the Windows firewall just either turn it on or off, and that's about it. It does everything else for you. With Zone Alarm, you can tweak like what type of websites it'll allow you to visit, what type of things it will allow you to download or not to download. So an example would be you could say, okay, Zone Alarm, I want you to block all websites that tries to install scripts on my machine without me knowing it. It'll do that. It'll just block it and you won't know it's blocking it. And it'll actually prompt you at times if you're going to a site that's full of them. It says, don't go to this site. Don't recommend it. So the network has to provide the protection. It can be hardware or software. Networks with weak security invite attackers, and we actually call that honeypots in IT terminology. We actually do create honeypots for a reason and on purpose in IT to attract attackers, attract hackers. And the reason we do that is so we can bait them to a device on my network that they'll spend all their time on, but it's going to absolutely do nothing or have nothing on that device that's worth anything, basically. And so a lot of times IT folks will create honeypots throughout the network that will attract attackers and invite them. But home users and business users alike, a lot of times, and even whole networks sometimes, are prone for attacks because of their security weakness. So aspects of building a secure network, the devices itself, technologies, and how you design your network. So, security features found in network devices, basic level of the OSI model that was standard built in 1978, revised in 83, still used today. It's how networks are created. In my PCT130 class a couple weeks ago, they got in groups and had to build a network from a business I gave them of so many users, so many computers, so many servers, so many switches, and they use the OSI model to determine how to build that. This illustrates, this OSI model is just a model to illustrate how data flows from one node to the next. It breaks it down into 7 layers of the OSI model. Each layer has a different networking task, and it cooperates with layers above it and below it. Here's the layers of the OSI model. You got application layer, which is a very top layer. It provides services for apps. It is not an app itself, it just provides services for apps. Presentation layer, it compresses and encrypts data. And while I'm walking through this, I'll just give you an example of Eagle. You're familiar with that, right? Eagle would work with the application layer. RBC Eagle would. And whatever browser you're using. So say you send a message to me in Eagle. You're going to use the application layer to form the message. You press send. It's going to go through the presentation layer to encrypt that message. Session layer to establish a session long enough to send that message through Eagle to my inbox. Transport layer is transporting it from your computer to the server to the inbox. And this provides connections, management, termination of a connection, also retransmission. If a packet drops, it'll retransmit it. Network layer is it finds what your network address is on your side, what the network address is for the server it's connected to. The data link layer, this performs the physical address. It knows your MAC address, it knows my MAC address, it knows the server's MAC address. And then the physical layer would be the actual server that Eagle's connected to. It would know its physical MAC address and your physical MAC address, as well as your physical IP address and source IP address and destination IP address. Hubs are basically a dummy device. And a hub basically usually has on the back of it 4 to 6 ports where you can connect Cat5 cables to those ports and connect multiple computers to those hubs to allow them to talk on a network. It's called a small LAN, a local area network. A hub uses twisted pair. If you look at the back of the wall, the white cables, blue cables, red cables, specifically the white and blue, are twisted pair, straight cables that allows you to connect computers to a hub to talk to one another. This works on layer 1 of the OSI model, which would be your physical layer, which you could talk about your NIC card, your switch ports, hub ports, anything that connects the wire to that would be the physical layer. It's ignorant of data source and destination. It doesn't really care. It's a dummy hub. It just first come, first serve. It's rarely used today because it doesn't have really any security wrapped around it. It's just a port to get from one computer to the other. It's an intermediary device to allow us to talk. So you've got computer A, computer B. Here's the hub. It serves as what's called a switching mechanism to allow a straight cable to go from this computer to a hub, from this hub to this computer. This serves as, a hub serves as a switcher to switch the communication lines to where you can talk one to the other. A switch, we have them in the back of the room, a number of switches there on the right. Would you do me a favor? Would you open that case up for me all the way? Yeah, that'd be great. Awesome. As you can see, the switches there have a number of wires running into them. Each one of those switches, each one of those wires are labeled, or switches are labeled to where they're going. So each port is going to go to a certain computer here in the room. And switches work on the network layer of the OSI model, and they operate on the layer 2. They determine where things are going and coming. They use a MAC address to identify your device that's connected. And they do provide better security in hubs because they can be configured and had added rules to switches. And Cisco, by the way, does teach how to do that. And you'll learn the basics of switch configuration. In my years of experience with switches, I'm still learning, and I've taken all the certifications, but still learning switch technologies because they have new ones that come out. You have to learn different things about them, maybe different commands that they might have. The commands aren't that hard to remember. They're pretty basic, but you have to learn them. And so the network administrator will monitor these devices in traffic. And you can have different methods. Can somebody think of an app we've used in here that'll help you monitor traffic? A real simple one. There you go, Wireshark. Now, is it real fancy? No. Is there other ones that are a lot nicer graphical interface where you really see, you know, what's going on easier? Yeah. In IT office, we have an app that basically looks like a whole bunch of circles, big circles. And inside of the circles are the different servers. And when a circle's green, or when a dot's green, that's an IP address, every dot is, it's healthy. It's a good ping. It's a healthy server. They start getting yellow and red, it means pinging is very latent. It's taking a long time to ping that server. And it could be their server's getting ready to go down. Could be someone doing a lot of activity on that server for whatever reason. But a monitoring tool is healthy for a network to have. And the app that we use, you can actually just right-click on any node on that screen and literally restart the server from that node if you wanted to. Or you could see what's going on. You could maybe start a filtering of that server to see what's going through that server. Maybe the problem is somebody is downloading a whole bunch of files, or they're moving files from one network to the other, one network folder to the other. I work with a company that does AutoCAD, and AutoCAD files, if you've ever worked with AutoCAD or heard of AutoCAD, can be quite large, you know, and it's not uncommon when an engineer is moving, let's say, a 15 gig file from one network folder to the other. It tends to slow the network down a little bit because it's moving that whole 15 gig file. And regardless how fast your network pipe is, we have a gigabit pipe they're running, it's still going to slow things down a little bit. And so network monitoring tools will help you determine the health of your network. And generally it's going to be in an IT office. And we have somebody that does it not 24/7, about 12 hours, 13 hours of the day, somewhere around there. She's there till like 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night. And at the end of the shift, they take the backups from the IT room, give it to, it's in a case, and somebody comes and picks it up, an outside source, and sends off our tapes to outside storage. Just, God forbid, the campus was all to burn down, we'd have all of our data to restore. So here is a port mirroring. That is an example of what you would do if you're like in the IT office here. We have a port mirroring port on the switch that allows a monitoring computer in there to monitor. And basically all a mirroring port is some computer is plugged into one of the switches to monitor that network, is all it means. Okay, some computer is plugged into one of the switches to monitor all network traffic. It could be your computer, it could be my computer, it really doesn't matter. But for graphical purposes or bless you, educational purposes, it shows you a physical computer to a mirrored port. And all that basically means is one of the ports on the switches is where you can see all the traffic. Here's an example of another monitoring computer in between a firewall and a router. Now, a router, as we mentioned in here, is the first line of defense for your network. It has all the rules on what can come in, what can go out. In between the router and the firewall is going to be a lot of times a network tap. Now, technically, sometimes that tap can actually be in the router or it can be in the firewall, but it's just showing you again graphically a network tap in between. You normally wouldn't see that. You would normally see that monitoring computer plugged into the firewall or plugged into the router to see the traffic as it's going in, going out. But you can buy appliances that are just called network taps. Barracuda is one of those appliances that allows you to plug in, configure it, and it blocks or lets through everything on that network. And then so before the server or the computers ever see anything, everything should be rule-based, set up to block what needs to be blocked. Now, then how does stuff get in networks then, if that's the case? Well, your network's only as secure as the rules that are set up, number one. Number two, your network's only secure as the updated DAP files from your antivirus or whatever software you have running, antivirus software or malware software you have running on your network. So if it's out of date, then you're shot in the foot. Or let's say it's a new variant of malware that somebody clicked on an email attachment that somebody sent them, or a link somebody sent them. That's going to happen. That can happen. It does happen all the time. So in that case, IT has to do its due diligence and maybe unplug that computer, take it off the network, unplug that server, reformat it, whatever they've got to do. And I'll give you some examples of recent ones that I've experienced and folks around Rockford have experienced. You might have heard of the term ransomware. Anybody heard of that before, ransomware? Ransomware is a very nasty prompt that users get that says, your computer has been encrypted, call this number or click on this link to give us your credit card information, pay X amount of dollars to unlock all of your data. You have 24 hours. Okay. Do they actually unlock it when people pay? Yes, they do. But you might say, is it illegal what they're doing? Yes, but it's very hard to trace where the IP is coming from a lot of times. So it's a nasty malware virus, kind of a both, that literally does what it says it's doing and encrypting all of the hard drive data. And if the user doesn't pay, they're going to, that data will stay encrypted. So you say, well, why don't they just call IT and tell them about it? Why do you think people do not call IT and tell them about it? What do you think?
They were unreasonable, but something that would work against them.
So maybe they're on a website they shouldn't have been on, something like that. Or maybe it was a real innocent thing, and I've seen this happen, where they just got an email from somebody, they clicked on a link, and boom, there it is, right? Like the song says, boom, there it is. It's just right in their face, it's locked. And this person might be a, CEO, they might be a VP, but it'd be kind of embarrassed maybe to tell IT possibly that this is happening right now. So what they do, get out the credit card, pay it, done. IT never knows. And that does happen. But I've seen the flip side where they do call IT, and what IT does is just unplug the computer, take it off the network, see what other things it might have done on the network if anybody else has had it happen by just going around the building, talking to people, and reformatting the computer, plugging it back in, and they're back in business. And just let them know, hey, don't feel bad. It can happen to anybody, and it could happen to anybody. Just, beware of links people send you to, don't just click on them without knowing what that link is about, what it is. If you have questions, you can ask us and we can look into it. But it is a multi-million-dollar business. Somewhere I read last semester, something like $300 million a week was being made on ransomware in the U.S. alone, not counting other countries. So it's the number one money maker next to Viagra marketing ads. Yeah, next to marketing for Viagra. So
whether the government's so upset with Hillary Clinton, she could have been.
Exactly. She had her server in the bathroom, or where she had her server. I don't know. Her different things. Exactly. Now, I totally get what she's getting attacked for, but you know what? It's probably the tip of the iceberg, what actually goes on. It's terrible to say, but I'm guessing there's other government personnel that might not do something like that, but could be doing that as well and being compromising data, corporate, secure data or secure information. And I think at that time she was Secretary of State, right? National Defense. So a lot of stuff coming through. So yeah, It is what it is on that. But I think a lot of people in government and in business do things they shouldn't do. She just got caught. So anyway, so let's talk about different types of ways you can protect things. This one talks about, so I talked about protecting through the switches itself. So let's talk about some attacks. We're going to do one on Thursday, actually, for Mac spoofing and IP spoofing. The way it works on Mac and IP spoofing is where an attacker will come in, find out the IP range of your network, find a valid one that somebody's using right now, and then spoof it. And then do malicious code, malicious activity, get off the network. Then when IT traces it back to where it came from, it goes back to, you know, Jim in the cubicle that's been working all day. It goes back to his computer or his IP address that's on his computer. So he gets blamed for it and gets called on the carpet for it. Well, he's just been on Word all day and been on the internet, maybe going to different forums for his business. But, you know, that's where it goes. And so the hacker's out of the building. They've been gone for a while, and the spoof's over. But this one talks about, the first one talks about MAC flooding. Well, this one is where the attacker overflows a switch's address with a fake MAC address. And on Thursday, we'll do that. We'll show you how hackers can fake a MAC address and send multiple packets to a switch to flood it, to basically halt traffic and cause havoc on the network. Security defense on this one is to use a switch that closes ports with too many MAC addresses. What that means is when you create a fake MAC address, plural, addresses plural, multiples coming in. Well, you can configure switches that maybe only allows up to 2 to 3 MAC addresses of the same type. And that could happen on normal network flow because over time, maybe throughout the day, a MAC address is sending information to the switch constantly. That can happen 2 to 3 times. But when you go into, like, say, 100, 200 different times the same MAC address sending a packet, that's where it blocks it. It will literally block the ports on the computer that's sending it. It blocked that port from that computer. MAC address impersonation is where you impersonate another MAC address on the network, and like the IP one I just mentioned earlier, do malicious activity. Security defense on this: configure the switch so only one port can be assigned per MAC address. One port per MAC address. And what that means basically is you can only have a singular MAC address per source. So per IP address, one MAC address. That's it. ARP poisoning. We did this a week ago, was it? On the man in the middle, where you send forged ARP packets to a source device, and then the ARP computer, the one that's getting all the traffic, the man in the middle attack, is seeing all the traffic coming in. Like on the lab, the one we did, man in the middle, you guys could see all the traffic. It grabbed all the username and passwords. Then when I killed it, it stopped it. Well, one way to secure against that is you can have an ARP defense appliance like Barracuda, or you can buy just appliances that just do ARP defense only. And they look just like a little switch or router, and they defend against that from happening. Port mirroring is where an attacker connects his device, laptop, whatever, to a switch mirrored port or to a wall port. That's why it's important when you're in a business to have ports blocked. You can buy little blocks for Cat5 cable plugs, RJ45s. If you guys, when you guys leave tonight, if you go down to the first floor, the WTC, anytime you see a port down there, notice that there's going to be locks on those ports where people can't plug in their Cat5 cable. But some business will have those open for a network tap, And it's really easy for a hacker to come into a lobby or a guest area, find an open port, bring in a really small router that is a Wi-Fi router. Let's say it's a Wi-Fi router. Plug it in to power, plug it into the port, put it behind a flower pot, leave, and then after 5, they now have they can log into that Wi-Fi access point that they set up and get into the network with the network tap. And so network taps can be found in open areas and public. They can be found in private areas like boiler rooms, closets, restrooms. Believe it or not, some places have ports in there for whatever reason. So protect your switches, lock them. That will help it. Next is routers and load balancers. A router is on a layer 3. It's a very smart device that can filter out all specific traffic. Filter out, don't allow FTP to happen. It can do that. You don't allow, let's say, social media traffic. All of them usually fall upon certain, like Facebook and Twitter, falls upon certain ports. You can block those in a router. Now could folks figure out how to get around that? Yeah, for sure. But you're going to be able to block most of it with a router. So you can block certain traffic coming in. Certain IP addresses can be blocked. Certain websites can be blocked. And these are all literally typed in via rules by the network admin. Load balancer basically distributes the load of the network across the network, and it can be contributed upon different devices and request upon different devices. Advantage of a load balancer is that it reduces the probability of overloading the server. Here's an example. If you guys ever want to download a file from, say, Microsoft or some big conglomerate of a file that you were downloading, and it started out really fast, but then it went to a screeching halt, almost like a dial-up speed, right? Anybody had that happen before? Well, what's happening is that there's a load balancing configuration on that network that you're downloading from. So it will not overload that server when a whole bunch of people hit it. Like an example would be, could you imagine the load balancing done on, like, say, Home Shopping Network? If you ever bought anything from them or you've ever watched it, they say, go to this website, click this link to buy this whatever. A lot of people go to that site. It can literally crash the web server without load balancing. So it may take a while for things to load in a load balancing network, and it will, but servers won't crash and they won't be overloaded. It basically looks at all the connections at that point and then balances them out evenly to say, okay, for these 1,000 connections to download this file, it's going to take this long, and then it starts, slowing down the download speed for you. And you might even seen this: the download speed gets really slow, and then 5 minutes later, it's really fast again. Then 5 minutes later, it's slow again. So, best time of the day to download large files, if you're downloading files for, say, an ISO for an image that you're installing, is, after hours when people are in bed, like 8, 10, 9, 10, 11, midnight, 1, 2, 3 in the morning, whatever. It's the best time to download stuff from your network. So load balancing reduces network downtime. It's achieved through software or hardware. You can do load balancing through Barracuda, as I mentioned, load balancing through Cisco appliances as well. I'm trying to think of another one. SonicWall is a good one. SonicWall, you might have heard of that one. SonicWall is a good network device. It can do load balancing. It can also block sites. It can block different types of traffic. So if you wanted to block all social media, it's a check mark. Block all social media between 9 and 5. Maybe I'll open it up between lunch, between 12 and 1, which a lot of places do. You can set all that up. The load balancing helps keep the network running smoothly. Security advantage of load balancing: it can stop attacks directly at the server level or application level. It can detect such things like denial of service, and some can deny attackers information like a ping. It can also deny information like HTTP error pages, or if you remember when we did the lab where I had you download a link and follow the HTTP traffic, remember, to see what was being downloaded, you can actually block that from being viewed, where it can't be seen at all. So specifically designed network devices, security network devices are out there. I've mentioned a couple of them, Sonic Wall, Barracudas, to name a few. Firewalls are basically hardware-based network firewall that inspects packets going and coming and can accept or deny them. And I do recommend, if you've not ever played with it, on the weekend, if you want to do this, you have free time, download Zone Alarm and just watch it accept it. You actually literally need to accept or deny stuff as it goes in and out. Then once you get through watching it, you can delete it, get rid of it, uninstall it. But it's kind of interesting to just see how much traffic is just coming through your network, your computer, with that just sitting there doing nothing, just idly sitting on your no web browser loaded up, nothing, no apps running, and it's pretty interesting to see.
It can actually give you this map too.
Do I know?
Gives you a map of
oh yeah, of where all this stuff's coming from. Yeah. Where this stuff's coming from, right? All around the globe, you're right. And that's kind of cool, I think, to see that. I mean, just to see where it's all coming from. So here's where the firewall location would be. You've got the web. Well, you have your ISP coming in through Comcast, Verizon, wherever, AT&T. You hit your internet router, then your firewall, then your rest of your network. Okay, so firewall is going to block anything it needs to block. And by the way, your internet, your Wi-Fi routers at home have built-in firewalls built into them. If you buy a Linksys, if you buy a D-Link, doesn't matter. They're already turned on when you take them out of the box. And they have what's called NAS firewalls, meaning everything you do on your network is the NAS creates a fake IP address for everybody outside the world. And so I recommend keeping your firewall turned on your Wi-Fi routers at home. And if you're a gamer, you might think, well, it's kind of blocking some stuff, it's making things slow down. You can actually put your game console on what's called a DMZ port on your Wi-Fi router, and you're totally unblocked from anything. You're just totally freedom out. You can have total freedom of traffic. And I recommend that to students. Never run your Wi-Fi, or never run your gaming consoles on Wi-Fi, because it's, number one, too slow, regardless of how fast the Wi-Fi you have. Number two, you cannot run DMZ effectively a lot of times on a Wi-Fi connection. So it'll be a wired connection to, like, say, how many has Xbox or a Wii that you play with sometimes? Okay, put it on your DMZ, which means you're going to have no unfettered communication, and you'll see a lot better gameplay. And you're not probably using your DMZ port anyway, so you can use it for something like that. And what's great about DMZ ports is, if an attack comes through your DMZ port, it's just hitting your game console, which doesn't even know what to do with it, because the software your game console runs on is totally different than Windows or Mac or Linux. So it's not even going to do anything to it. And so, and being on DMZ port, it's totally separate from everything else on your network. It's not going to hit any other computer on your network. So if you want to research DMZ port on your router, it'll give you more information of how to set it up. And if you need help, I have a tutorial of how to set up your own web server at home to browse out anywhere in the world using any router. If you want that link, I can give it to you of how to do that. Pretty easy to set up. But firewall actions on a packet can be either you allow it, you block it, or you prompt it to do something. Like, say, oh, by the way, I need you put a password in before you go to this website. And you can do that. Rule-based firewall settings is where you say, okay, if, say, I have a web server at home and my URL is abc.com, when people type abc.com, it comes to my external IP address. Once it hits my router, that external IP address is then converted by a rule to the local IP address in my home or in my business. That's all configured with a rule-based firewall setting. The settings-based firewall it allows administrators to create parameters of such things. Like I mentioned earlier, no social media is allowed in our network except between 12 and 1 during lunchtime, which a lot of businesses do that. And you can go to your shopping sites, you can go to your social media sites, unless social media is down, which today, Facebook, it was actually yesterday, Facebook was down for 30 minutes yesterday. Did your world stop? Did anybody realize Facebook was down for 30 minutes yesterday? I think it was Monday. Yeah, it was yesterday, Monday. When was it? Friday? Or Saturday? It might have been Saturday. Saturday was down for 10 minutes. No big deal on Saturday. But 30 minutes from 9 to 9:30, somewhere around there yesterday, it was down. You say, who cares? Well, that's what I'd say. But Facebook is, businesses spend tons of money on advertising for Facebook to be up, for people to see their ads. So I'm guessing those businesses and individuals that had ads probably get some type of discount or something, I'm guessing, for that little snafu. And for Facebook to go down worldwide for 30 minutes, it may notice. If you just Google tonight, Facebook down, those two words, you'll see the articles that were out yesterday. And there are articles from reputable sites like CNN Money talked about it. They're not going to talk about it if it's for a minute or two down, but 30 minutes they're going to talk about it. And by the way, it did drop the stock market for Facebook yesterday after the attack or after the shutdown. It dropped it 2 points or something like that. They'll be fine, I believe, but it did drop a little bit. So let's talk about rules for web pages that can be set on a network router. Here's some rules that you'll learn if you take a Cisco class on configuring router, configuring switches. You can set a rule like, okay, what IP addresses can come into this? Well, you could do a source address equals any, meaning any IP address that comes into this router, I'm going to accept, or goes out, I'm going to accept. Explanation is a source IP of the web server on the internet. Filtering here is because the IP address of the web server cannot be known, you just say any. Next one is destination IP address, or destination address equals internal IP address. That's the one I mentioned earlier of the website. If you're hosting a website internally, when you buy, like, say, internet connection through Xfinity or through AT&T, they're going to give businesses 2 or 3 external IP addresses that they can use for whatever reason. VPN is number 1, most businesses use. Number 2, a web server. So when they hit that web server with that IP address, or that switch with that IP address, it's going to convert it to a local IP in a rule setting. Port 80 indicates that everything that comes through port 80 is going to be accepted, and no other ports are open, only port 80. So if you wanted port 21, you'd have to type port equals 21, save it. And by the way, these rules that you learn when you're setting up a router, you save them you back them up in like a text file and upload them. Because if a router crashes, you can easily, or a switch crashes, you can easily wipe out all the rules and then re-upload a file again of those rules that you made. And I recommend doing that because they do crash at times. So methods of firewall packet filtering, there's 2 types, stateless and stateful. Stateless means basically it inspects every packet and permits or denies them as it's set by the administrator. Zone alarm would be a perfect example of that. Stateless packet filtering. You have to, as the administrator, tell when a packet can be coming in and can't be coming in. You accept it or deny it. Stateful keeps a record of the state of the connection and then makes decisions based on the connection and conditions. So an example would be if it sees a packet coming through that has any type of FTP port in there, a port 21, it's going to block it, okay, because of a decision that was made, a rule that was set. And we'll also say in the social media example, if a person in your network tries to go to social media except for 12 to 1 in the afternoon, it's going to block it. Okay, that'd be a stateful. So nobody has to prompt, no administrator has to sit there on every packet and say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. On a stateful, it's a rule-based, and it's going to do it all the time, regardless of a person's watching it or not watching it. Web application firewall, tons of them out there that you can buy, free and buy both. What these do is basically looks into the HTTP traffic to look at FTP, Telnet. It can block certain sites. Net Nanny was one that was out. It's still out. Net Nanny is one of them. That's a web application firewall. So if you have kids at home, you can fire up Net Nanny and block websites, block pornography. You can block game sites. You can block times when they can be on the internet, can't be on the internet, all that good stuff. Proxies is where you basically set up a device that all your internet flows through as a substitute, and it's basically can be configured as well, like Net Nanny, to block or let through certain things. IT kind of has to be careful because you want to make sure in IT side that you block most all proxies, because generally if somebody's using a proxy site, it's generally not good. It's not a good thing for the most part. So most IT departments will have all proxy websites blocked. And you can find services like through Barracuda that just has a check mark that says block proxies, and it'll block them all that it knows about. Here's an example of a proxy server on a network. The only added piece here is a proxy server. And what the proxy server is going to do is, if a hacker was to look at a proxy server IP address, it would not be the real IP address. It'd be a different one. Okay, so a proxy server is a man-in-the-middle type of device, but for good of your network, to save from attacks. It could also be used for evil in that if somebody's trying to run all their network through a proxy application or proxy web service, the IT department's not going to see what they're doing because it's going to a proxy. And the word proxy means instead of, or for somebody else, or for something. So in proxy means this proxy server is handling all the traffic of the network. So here's an example of setting up a proxy server in Internet Explorer. You basically put in the proxy information, the address and the port, generally for at least HTTP. And once it's set up, whenever you browse, whenever the person browses anything on that computer, is going through the proxy. So the anything if you're using port monitoring or you're using any type of monitoring tools, it's not going to see any website this computer is going to, except for the proxy website. You'll see that. Does that make sense? So you've got your proxy website, and say they go to 100 websites, the computer does, the IT department's only going to see the proxy website only. And so that's how attackers will use proxies. That's how people in a network will actually bypass filtering, is by using proxies as well. The way around that is for IT is to block as much as possible all proxy websites from being accessed within your firewall, within the firewall. But there are some advantages. It can increase speed because every time you visit a website on a proxy, it caches that website, and you don't have to reload it. So you can say, you can keep caches for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever. It reduces cost because it doesn't have to load the website each time. You can find proxies, though, that are good proxies, like Net Nanny, that is a good proxy. It's a positive proxy for families to use because it can block websites that you don't want your kids to go to. Stronger security, because it's a proxy and malware would not hit the computers, it would hit the proxy IP address. You're going to be thwarted against intercepting malware much more easily. And it does hide all the client's activity and IP address. So there is a flip side, a positive side. Net Nanny would be a positive example. Negative example would be underground proxies, underground black market proxies, that where people do pornography and they do selling of people and selling of stolen items and all the crime, pharmaceutical, you name it, would be in black market proxies. And there's tons of them, by the way. So proxies can be good, but they can also be bad. For most businesses, they're not going to use proxies. Home users, yeah, for sure, like NetNanny, it's a good one. But not much use in the business world because of the inherent dangers of proxies. Reverse proxies don't serve clients. All they do is route information to another proxy outside of that user's area. Reverse proxies, again, are generally used for malicious purposes. So you're not going to see it in IT. So here's an example of a reverse proxy. You have 3 web servers on the right. You've got a reverse proxy. We'll say it's server123.org. You'll notice the reverse proxy server routes to the correct server, the source IP. It gets a web page, goes through the internet. There, the next one, which you'll notice the IP address is the same in the middle proxy. Okay, but let's look at the last proxy where the user actually made the request. There's the source IP address. Notice it's a .20, but the proxy, reverse proxy, changes it from a .20 to a .254, to where it's nearly impossible to track from a hacking standpoint. Anybody heard of spam before? Okay. There is a spam, anti-canned spam act that Congress passed years ago. Doesn't really do much, but 97% of email that comes into all businesses, or majority of businesses, is spam. Meaning only 3% of emails are actually good emails, valid emails, productive emails. Spam is used from advertisement to malware to phish sites, and the spam enterprise spam blockers like Norton Antivirus has spam blocker. In fact, all of your big name companies will have a spam filter. If you have a free Gmail or free Yahoo, it's got a spam filter built into that as well. But basically, it blocks the spam before it reaches a host. There's 2 protocols in email that's used for the most part. SMTP for sending messages, POP for receiving messages. SMTP default port is port 25. It passes all non-spam email to the SMTP port. And so you can do spam filters blocking stuff through port 25. You can actually have a spam filter here. It shows an email sender on the left, a receiver on the right, an SMTP server on the left because they're sending mail. It goes through the internet, goes through the spam filter on port 25, SMTP server, port 26, POP3 server because this user is getting ready to get the mail. Remember, SMTP is for sending, POP3 is for receiving, and then they finally get the message. The spam filter in this illustration can be on a server. It can be a hardware device like Barracuda, Sonic Wall, Cisco devices. It can be a spam filter as well. It's generally hosted on the same server or near the same server as your email server because that's where spam comes from, is through your email. Spam filters can be installed through SMTP, through third party, where basically is the emails are cleansed before they come to the organization. And so you can pay companies like Amazon. You can buy spam filter through Amazon, spam filter through Microsoft. Amazon would be the bigger one that's out there right now, where all your email will go through a cloud before it hits your servers. Then VPN. I'm guessing you guys have heard of VPN. Virtual Private Network is basically where you can create a tunnel between your computer and your business with a VPN connection. And it uses unsecured network as if it were secure. When you're connected to VPN, you're basically like you're sitting in your office. Okay, so if you go on the internet, your websites will be monitored because you're literally behind your firewall once you're connected to VPN. If you do anything, regardless of what it might be, you want to get to a network drive, you can do that on a VPN connection. Because again, it's like you're connected to, you are connected to that network virtually. Types of VPN: remote access, where the user to LAN connection, and then site to site, where multiple sites can connect to other sites over the internet. All right. Endpoints is where basically it's used to connect VPN through software. Cisco is going to be the #1 provider, by the way, of VPN software. Okay, and they're the #1 user in the world. And VPNs can be software-based like Cisco, and hardware-based like Cisco too, because Cisco has a VPN client that users have to install on their laptop, desktop. If you're using a tablet, it's already built in. But then when they log into what's called a Cisco PIX server for that VPN connection. Very expensive, by the way, not real cheap, but very secure. You can have also what's called internet content filtering, which most businesses have. Colleges generally don't have much, believe it or not. We do have content filtering for child pornography, but that's about it. Everything else is open. We monitor all of our traffic. You can also block access to pre-selected websites. Unapproved sites can be identified by URL or matching keywords. So the 5 types of filtering it talks about here is URL and content filtering, where you literally have to have a whitelist or a blacklist or pattern of websites that people can't go to, or keywords. They can't say certain words. It won't go there. So a whitelist would be, here's all the sites you can go to. Okay. Blacklist would be, here's all the sites, you can go to every site but these. Okay. Whitelist is you can only go to these sites. So most networks do a blacklist type of scenario, meaning you can go to every site in the world but these blacklist sites you're not allowed to go to. Also, there's called malware filtering in the last few years, where web pages are blocked or made inaccessible by some type of flag that the browser's causing when they go to a website. Chrome has a pretty good, their new version of Chrome, I've noticed, has a pretty good malware filter built into it. Also has a good phishing filter built into it. If you go to a site that's being phished at the time, like when we did that man-in-the-middle attack, we didn't use Chrome for this very reason. Because if you went to Chrome on that attack, it actually said, a little message came up that says, this website could be being used by malicious code and it might be under attack. It actually said that. So I was pretty impressed by that. And so you can also prohibit file downloads. Why do you think it's important to prohibit file downloads on a network, on any network? Why do you think that's important to do?
Trojans and worms.
Yeah. And that can be coming through what medium can people download, or what do people download files from? Internet, maybe your email possibly, right? So yeah, blocking, prohibiting file downloads you can definitely do through the internet and through appliances on the network. Profiles, you can also do content-specific websites, like adult websites you don't allow, hacking websites you don't allow, virus-affected websites you don't allow, and these should be blocked. Detailed reporting. Administrators can have a detailed reporting of traffic And on Thursday, I'm going to actually give you guys a couple apps that you can try out that are free, that you can register your computer at home with. And when you're gone, it'll give you reports of things, like say, it'll give you reports of your network, reports of the health of your network, what updates need to happen, all that good stuff. It'll even give you reports of what websites have been trafficked on that computer as well. And so it's a free one that I'll mention on Thursday and show you how to set it up. So website or web security gateways can also block malicious in real time. A gateway would be blocking it through the application level filtering, and web security gateways can be usually devices like a Barracuda or Sonic Wall, and they're not real expensive. Sonic Wall is more consumer level. They start at about $500 to lower middle end businesses. Examples of blocked web traffic would be maybe you want to block all type of scripts from being downloaded, ActiveX from being objects from being executed, adware and spyware, peer-to-peer file sharing to be blocked. There's also passive and active security that can be blocked in the network and blocked through the firewall on what's called intrusion detection software or system that basically is constantly on, can detect attacks as they occur, and block computers accordingly. And I'm going to end on this one. Monitoring methodologies. There's 4 different types. And this is, your antivirus does this too, by the way. Anomaly-based would be, it compares current detection behavior with baseline. So if, let's say an example would be, a baseline would be when you go to a website, you click on it, normally the page loads and images load, and that's about it. Well, let's say you go to a website and it does that, plus your processing power starts going like crazy, or it starts trying to install applications behind the scene. That would be anomalies that they would catch and block. Signature-based monitoring, it looks for well-known attack signature patterns. An attack signature pattern would be launching pop-ups, launching ActiveX controls, trying to launch external applications would be signature-based monitoring. Behavioral-based monitoring detects abnormal actions by computer processes that you see when you do Control-Delete and Task Manager. So it alerts a user who decides whether to block or not block that activity. All right. An example would be, say a website, you click on a link and it notices in that link it's, say, an MP3 file, as an example. It prompts and says, on this type of monitoring, do you want to open up, give me a music playing app that you guys use on your computer? Any app. Do you guys even play music on your computer anymore? What is it?
Apple Music.
Apple Music. Well, QuickTime's one. What did you say back there? What was it? iTunes. There you go. On the Windows side, we have Windows Movie Player, right? Or Windows, I think it's Windows Media Player, if I'm not mistaken. So it could prompt you saying, oh, when you click on an MP3, an alert pops up and goes, this file wants to access ABC app. Do you want to allow this to go through? Do you want to allow this to be open? And it actually show you the name of the app. It could be QuickTime, could be iTunes U, could be whatever. You say yes, it opens up the app and plays the MP3 file. And that's what behavioral-based monitoring does. Then heuristic monitoring, it uses experience-based techniques, meaning it keeps track of all the activities on that computer by that user. Okay? If it sees anomalies outside of that user's activity, then it will block things. Because generally most people do certain things throughout the day when they're working. This heuristic monitoring keeps track of all of that. And it also keeps track of when you go to a certain website, what it normally does, keeps track of that. Well, let's say tomorrow you go to that website and it tries to do something different. It tries to launch an application or tries to install an application. It'll block it on that. So anomaly-based, signature-based, behavioral-based, and heuristic monitoring are the 4 different types of monitoring. On Thursday, what we're going to do, the lab is going to be on spoofing an IP address and a MAC address. And when we run the lab, all the computers that we run this on will all have the same IP address and MAC address. And we'll talk about how hackers use that, why they use it, and ways you can block that from happening on your network. So we'll do that Thursday. So we'll see you then. If you have any questions about anything or about the job I talked about, come up and see me before you leave. Otherwise, see you guys Thursday.